lost for word. But I would like to say today that what happened to Osime shows a long history of failings by the various authorities and how they have led to the unjust and insane threat of deportation still hanging over his head. Osime faces deportation because he was convicted and imprisoned for a crime that both he and the victim friend said he did not commit. We are concerned that there were no account or regard given in the trial to Osime autism and other disability. Because Osime was sentenced for 5 years, the presumption is to deport him. The first decision to deport was upheld. The then judge claimed he was not culturally orientated to this country, although he lived here all throughout his formative years and only lived in Jamaica until the age 4. It is seriously damning and comical to imagine that he can go back to Jamaica and literally picked up where he left off, as the judge claimed. We were also surprised and shocked that the judge refused to read Osime's psychological report, which showed him then to have been a child in the body of a 20-year-old man, saying that it would make no difference to the outcome of his decision. Osime would not be embraced, would be victimized, classed and threatened with negative connotation as a foreigner, and a negative phrase used of people who left the country and came back to either visit or reside. I am saddened as I have come to realize that what happened to Osime has happened to so many children who are autistic and have other learning disability, and to black children, boys in particular. He was failed by the authorities in terms of extra support he needed. His need was seen as a discipline problem, then manipulated by the justice system and criminalized, ending up in prison. In prison, he was abused and discriminated against, called racist, bigoted, and derogative names, punished, isolated, ganged upon, and for a period of time, deprived of food and water. Abused in prison because of his autistic behavior. His whole life is like a conveyor belt, from bad to worse. Many like Osime face the double punishment of prison and deportation. Osime should not be under the sentence of deportation and should not be deported. He left Jamaica when he was 4 years old. He has neither friends nor family there. No healthcare system to provide the care he needs. He didn't get the care in a rich and enlightened country like the UK. How is he going to get it in Jamaica, where he will be seen and treated as a foreigner, one who has no right, and in a country that struggles to deal with the reality of disability? Right now, the priority is Osime's health, and to lift the threat of deportation from off his head. It's destroying him, and he's struggling to cope with this uncertainty. For him, it's a torture, like being on death row, not knowing why or when. Each time the doorbell rings, he would say, "They're coming to get me." Racism is historical, and it is rooted in the past. But you constantly see it operating on a daily basis like a bullet ricochet everywhere and in every sphere of life, like a bad nightmare. that the pursued can't escape. There are different trauma, different heartaches that people of color have to live through. It is a perpetual trauma that we, in particular black men and youth, have to endure. This country has a difficult conversation to have and decision to make, but today it's about race. Take, for instance, Osime case. And as I have already said, there are many Osimes out there that have been failed by the system. Its hostile policy and its biased cops. When you think about the totality of these circumstances, you realize that we have made progress in some areas, but we still have not reached that mountaintop where majority of black people can say that they are not judged by the color of their skin, but by the contents of their character. We are far from that place. I am not so concerned about people calling me black, but I am concerned about the level of systemic oppression people of postcode they are born in or grow up under, and the color of their skin. All of these unnecessary pressures bear upon us, grinding us into the ground, destroying you physically, mentally, and socially. Me and my son, we just want some respite to pause and breathe. Some ill-informed people say we should leave their country. We are not illegal. We were first taken and then invited to come here to contribute. I think some people, including the government, have lost the value of what a life is, especially when we can inflict pain and suffering on others with impunity. One cannot fight for his life if you can barely survive. And that is what the hostile environment has created. My grandparents came to this country the 25th of the 7th, 1960, and contributed, and I do too. My grandmother went back to Jamaica and could not return. She died there, whilst her husband died and buried here in Leeds. Not even in death they could be reunited. And I am looking at history repeating itself. With the situation my son finds himself in, there is no shadow of doubt that he too will die if he's sent to Jamaica. This is his home. He has never left this country. Everything about Osime represents this country. He was cultured here and he was failed here badly. Yes. Yeah. It creates a lot of consequences for us as individuals and a people. The government need to look into their policies, because everyone should be treated with basic dignity. We were told whilst growing up that Britain was our motherland, and we willingly bought into it, embraced it. But now we are severely punished and discriminated against for no other reason than the color of our skin. I have felt it. I have seen it. And I have lived it. I would be ignorant and blind to the fact if I said that race didn't play a role in Osime's negative treatment in school, in the care system, and in the criminal justice system. It's not government that make this country great, but the many millions of kind and gracious people up and down the country who believe in value, fairness, and justice. This is why we are here today. It is 8 months since Osime has been released, and nothing has been put in place for him. He has no care plan for his physical, psychological, and social rehabilitation. We need a law around the way police investigation is carried out, which is left to manipulation. Also, there should be accountability. Because most of us in the black community have very little confidence in the police, and this needs to change. The investigating officer lied to the court and has done so many times, and there must be an investigation. This is not justice when an autistic and learning disabled man is put behind bars and threatened with deportation to a country that is alien to him based on a conviction that is questionable and tainted with injustice. How can this be just and fair? They lied to the court that there were no camera at the alleged scene. There was numerous cameras. What are they hiding? Because of the callous and reckless decision made by those services, my son's life expectancy has cut significantly. He developed an odd problem from the large doses of psychotic drugs administered to an autistic child. We cannot accept it and move on without accountability. What sort of life will he have? He is just 22 years old. It is unbearable. They made me sit and watch the light goes out of my son. I recall this incident. Whilst he was in hospital, his 2 hands was cuffed together and then chained to an officer. You could see the fright of terror on his face, and all he could do was to comment by saying to them, "Thank you." He could not eat nor drink because his hand was restricted. I had to feed him. His sanity and dignity was